What's good, agents? Welcome to the 12th episode of our podcast. The reason why I said our podcast is because I'm gonna change this name. It's gonna happen after the 13th. We're gonna change it. It's gonna be something a little easier. It'll happen. All right. We're gonna use ChatGPT something. Anyway, what is good, everybody? I hope you guys are having a good day. For everybody listening. But first, before we jump into anything, how are you guys doing? I know Dan was pulling an all-nighter because of Dragon Ball. But how are y'all?
Yeah, man. I got hit with the sickness. We're just rocking games. Like we've been kind of killing it actually. I think last couple of weeks with rocking games and really like putting in the testing and like trying different things out. And it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, last night I don't know what it was. We got off playing games and I just like went down like the rabbit hole with everything. So it was fun. But then the next time I looked over, I was like, oh crap, it's 7:30 in the morning. So I have to go to work. So yeah, I haven't done that in a long time. But I'm here. I'm ready. We're rocking and rolling.
We love it.
That's fair. No, busy as well, but feeling good. And I like what you're saying. I feel like I've been labbing a lot more with card games recently than I have been in a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like probably you and I have gotten in more games in the past week, 2 weeks, probably month, really, if we're being honest, than we have in like the last year. so that's
totally
been
agree.
A lot of fun. Yeah, that's been cool.
That's what a normal schedule does for me.
Yeah, that helps. Speaking of labbing in tournaments preparing for tournaments, I should say, and events. Frawley, I know you had mentioned like tournament season is coming up. You know, how do people like start playing? Whether that be for Dragon Ball, Digimon, it's all Bandai games that we generally talk about. But like, I'll let you take that away.
That's a good point. I mean, like starting with making sure you're keeping up to date with someone who's posting when tournaments are going up, because they don't normally open the same day they're posted. Normally they have a wait list, or they have, hey, come back in 2 weeks, this will be open. So mark it on your calendars to apply for stuff. If you want to apply to online, there's pretty heavy caps depending on like what's being played. So tickets sell out quick, and even if you're playing something that's like less popular, it can still go really quickly. Or check if there's a venue that you could go locally, or like not even locally, but like a little bit of a drive, because tournaments hopefully will be more common. They're trying to push them this year to like other local stores, which is cool. We even applied for one, and I have like my judge test coming up too, just to make sure we can do that. No, I think if we have to break it down to like 3 keys, and you guys can like elaborate on any of these if you feel like I miss anything, but like it's gonna be your hardware, so whatever you're using to record or to transmit your video, be a webcam, be a phone, and like included with that it'd be like lighting. 2 will be your play area, and like how well not only do you present information, but like making sure your hands are not visible, and like kind of like testing that out. And then the last thing I would say is deck prepping, or actually I guess deck registration. So make sure you have until usually the night before, midnight before, the day before, to submit a list. So you can usually submit multiple deck lists, as long as you double check with the tournament organizer that like your list is updated as you're going into the last day, or like into the first day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. And what I'll say off of that is I'll pivot to, because probably you made a lot of good points on that, like the online webcam events and like how to like really prep for those. I'll pivot to translating those key points into IRL events, because you know we're coming up to having more and more of those. I feel like as time continues to go on, and they become more of a regular thing across all games, right? You know, we've been talking about Star Wars Unlimited recently, how that one's already having 1Ks, 5Ks, Lorcana's having store championships, and you know, like in-person events and things like that. So I think those same things that Frawley says apply to those as well. Make sure that you know when registration opens, and if you know distance to these stores, you know, you want to make sure you show up on time, because they usually have pretty hard caps and they're not that lenient to let people in, and or past certain time, you know, even if you pre-register, because I've had that happen to me in the past, where you're like, you'll pre-register but then show up after registration closes and they won't let you in. So I think that's a big thing. It's just your time management skills, making sure that like you just show up on time. But then I think along with that is like you said, deck prep. That's a big one for me. I know because I usually wait to the last minute to like settle on a deck. I know for our Kissimmee Regional, I was literally trying like picking it. Like we were like playing a couple games like the night before I was like, okay, this is the deck I'm settling on. Which that's fine. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But just make sure that whenever you do decide to make that decision, that you're like very diligent on submitting it. However, wherever platform it is, whether it be the BCP, the Bandai app, RK9, wherever it is that you're doing. I think that's really, really important because any one of those steps gets missed. These people, like a lot of them, the judges and everything, because these events are so saturated. They usually have multiple games going on. They don't have time to really just focus on one individual player and trying to get their stuff right. They gotta, basically check in, move on to the next because there's so many players to get ready for this event. So. Yeah, I'd say make sure you're looking out for those things.
Yeah, I think a couple of things, specifically when you're looking at IRL events, bring extra sleeves because you never know when your sleeve's going to break, something's going to happen. If you got overshields, bring extras. Just bring extra material. Just do it because you never know. The other thing is for these IRL events, especially for my folks who are getting into Lorcana and you're planning to travel for these events and this is your first major event, obviously be safe, have fun, but listen, bring food, bring yourself some snacks, energy drinks, whatever you got to do to keep your energy up because some of these events are going to go to 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds, maybe longer. Like be prepared to be there all day. Try not to get hangry because the moment you get frustrated in any of these IRL events, I would argue it sticks with you a lot longer than it does for the webcam stuff because you're in the room. It's hard to go and get like time for yourself to recharge and like be like, okay, I'm good. Just take care of your mental for these in-person events. And I think the same is true for webcam, but it's like 10 times more true. I don't know how you want to describe that, but it's much more important in these IRL events to just like take time for yourself and just be prepared for it. It's a lot. You're not just dealing with yourself anymore and your technology, which you can argue which one is more frustrating. But like really just kind of take care of yourself at these events mentally because it's a lot of fun, but it's super exhausting. As far as IRL or online events, my biggest thing there obviously is always food. Y'all know I'm always streaming and I'm always got food on the side. And I literally will order pizza the day before so I can just throw it in the oven for the next day. Have food because you never know, especially if you're playing a deck where it's gonna run to time all the time. If you're a security control player or you're playing a lot against that, like you got to really think through these things that you may not consider in testing, but when you're doing these big events, you also have to think about everything outside of the game and kind of like what's going to be best for your mental state, so you can make the best plays possible. I think the other Dan and Frawley kind of covered the other stuff that's really important. But my biggest thing in doing these events has always been like self-care with like food or whatever you got to do. Bring some headphones and go sit down somewhere and kind of disconnect, whatever you got to do, because it's a lot.
I was so glad that someone touched on food and water because that is the absolute in a backpack. Bring yourself multiple bottles of water, bring yourself granola bars or whatever you have, because you're right. There's different strain on like the body either way. Because I feel like on a webcam tournament, I am still home. Like I still can get something. You're right. I can go to time, but like I could quickly grab something to do it. But IRL, I find it sticking it out, being with people, being exhausted, and like having to keep channeling through. Whereas on the webcam, it's keeping my attention because by round 6, I'm out of it, and I've done potentially 8 hours of this, staring at a screen, asking strangers questions. So like, it can definitely take a lot out of you. It's funny too because I was thinking about when we were talking about this topic is like, there's almost like different advice I would give to different levels of people. Because like if this is one of your first tournaments, I would say like try to stick out as much as you can. Like just play your rounds, even if you're losing. Like get your rounds, get your practice, like learn how it's going. But I would not give that advice to someone who like has studied and learned a deck and like knows when to scoop to get more time for another game. So it's the most general stuff I think we can do is just like I want to see as many people out as we can. I feel like this year they're really pushing for trying to bring events back to stores and doing online events. So I hope to see healthy numbers. At least it makes it safer to invest and to keep invested in like stuff like this. I'm trying to think if there's anything else specifically tournament wise. I would say learn your deck, like whether or not you know decks in the formats, whether or not you got to like lab or test with people in the hotel room the night before. Like obviously if you can get that is the best. Like rounds with buddies where you can explain combos or you guys can test timings on stuff to make sure that it goes through and you know the ruling when it comes up is way better than like having to wait for a judge on the day of. So any weird thing your deck could get caught up in interaction wise, you should like know the rules of. And that kind of frees you up to play your game and you can play everything else that's like coming at you. Because as long as you've taken your time to learn your thing, it's not as impactful. You aren't having to divide your brain into making sure I do things correctly and making sure that I know what they're doing.
Right. One thing I will say, and this, I'll preface this by saying that I understand that what I'm about to say, not everybody may have the access to, or it may not be the easiest thing, but somebody in our Discord, or I should say Asia's Discord, brought this up as what they do with like their group of testing partners and everything, that prior to usually or events like Asian would say, usually run 9 rounds, is several days leading up to the event, they'll literally run gauntlets of just 8, 9, 10 rounds straight constantly with their deck. And what I compare that to is like, I come from a sports background, so like I think of it like terms of like sports, right? Like if you know, like in a game scenario, you're gonna, you know, shoot 100 3-pointers, then the day before I need to be on the court shooting 100 3-pointers, right? So it's the same thing that you would think about like with card games, where like what Farley was saying is like learn your deck. Well, the best way you can do that is just repetition, right? So I understand it may not be the easiest, because if you don't have, you know, reliable testing partners, or maybe nobody's, I get that, but if you can, I know that's the ideal situation. It does take a lot out of you, but I think also going back to what Agent said too, it also kind of mentally prepares you too, because these events do take, whether they're webcam or IRL, they do take a lot out of you mentally, especially even if you're prepared with food, water, and all the sustenance you need, it's still going to weigh on you mentally. I mean, you're basically, you know, exercising your brain for, you know, a 10-hour, 12-hour day nonstop. So you kind of have to prepare for that. It's kind of like the whole, like, I don't know if you guys ever heard one, like couch to 5K kind of thing. You don't want to just hop up off the couch and just like go run 9 rounds and think that you're going to be, you know, solid. So I think any type of prep that you can do that mimics as closely as possible to what the actual event is going to be like is the best thing you could probably try to do.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like, you know, we do that every night now inherently, right? As making content, all that fun stuff. But yeah, like get those reps in, man. And even if you're just playing against the same decks, I do think there's a lot of value there in that you'll learn your deck and you'll get to practice your stuff. But I seem like I'm focusing a lot on the mental stuff too. But I think something to keep in mind when you're at these events too is just because something that was easy in testing, don't think it's going to be easy in the real match. Like, I feel like for me, and maybe you guys can attest to this too, whenever I go into a match and I think, oh, they're playing, like I'm gonna use Dragon Ball for example, oh, they're playing Vegeta or some Vegeta leader, this is gonna be like a cakewalk. I'm not gonna lose. Those are usually the games I lose, because you go into them with like this mindset of like, I've got this isn't gonna be a problem because like I've done this a million times of testing. Like, play every game as if like you don't know everything that's gonna happen, right? Like, treat each event as its own thing, or each round as its own thing. I think you'll do better that way, and you won't get thrown off your game if your opponent does something that you weren't anticipating, or like you do have to do something where you have to change up your game plan. Be as fluid as you can, because my biggest thing with these events, and my biggest piece of advice for anybody in these events, is don't get consumed by the tilt. It's very easy to get tilted, and that will F up your entire run. Because I feel like once you hit that point, it might be time to drop, or you just gotta like take a L that round and go sit down somewhere. Because once that hits you, it's hard to kind of climb your way out of it, especially if you have like a difficult matchup or like something kind of just throws you for a loop. Do what you got to do, man. It's a thing.
Yeah, to tack onto that really quick is you have to remember you're like, you personally are going into that event playing the specific deck that you chose for a reason, right? It's either the deck that you feel the most comfortable with, the one that you know the best, the one that you think is the best, right? Well, every other person there, assumingly, has the same reason why they picked that deck. So like, yeah, if I sit down against a random ABC leader or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I can run the table with this because I do it in testing all the time. Well, my testing partner or whoever I'm testing with that's playing that leader may not know all the ins and outs or whatever, but the person that I sit down with across from at an actual event, they have tested that thing 100, 200 times, and they know it in and out. So you can't just go in and think, oh, okay, just because I played against it and I know it, it's going to, so yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It's like, go in expecting that the way that you know your deck inside and out, whoever you're sitting across from knows theirs. So just plan for that.
Never.
I really. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I just wanted to add, never get caught in that trap of such and such deck cakewalks this other deck, because I think that thought process is a freaking trap, because people say that all the time, and I kind of side-eye it every time, because I'm like, until it isn't. So just keep, like, there are some things I think where that is probably more true, but like, don't get lost in that trap of like, it's a trap. That's all I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the concept of like taking the L for a second and then being able to drop it is the key. Like you're gonna lose, you're gonna get it, you're gonna have feels about it, but like the key is not to not feel that, but to be able to leave it behind. Yeah. So it'll be like, okay, I played like garbage, it's fine. I got it for the next one. Like the ability to look ahead is good, and it's funny to watch us like pinwheel off each other and being like, oh, he's got a good point, I could tackle that. Like,
yeah,
he's got a great point, I'm gonna tackle onto that. Yeah, like, and as the rule I think I've advocated the most for tournaments, and the one that's like upset me the most about tournaments. So the thing I can give to you guys is never feel bad about having to ask for a ruling. Like, make the call, ask all the questions, especially in online versions of this game where we cannot touch the physical card. And because it's tournament rules, you can't have like a tab open or whatever to be able to keep track of things. Like, asking if something has blocker, asking if something has protection, like all of these things are very important and are going to keep you from making a terrible mistake. Because especially with games where they can just be like, hey, the next turn that guy swings, you lose 2 memory. If you don't remember that and you don't go, hey man, like, that's this, right? Is that still good? Yeah, no, that's happening now. Okay. Asking the questions will make you will cause you the least small mistakes. And it'll only be like games that get out of hand or like bad draws that you will really have to analyze afterwards. Like, because the other stuff is like, I knew everything going into it. I knew all the information. There wasn't secret information because you can always ask about it.
Yeah. And I think, to that point as well, as far as like asking questions, like, don't be nervous about asking your opponent something. Because what I do, which y'all probably notice on stream, I do this to people all the time, because you never want to sound accusatory. I will be like, oh, I didn't know this card does this thing that they did wrong, that I know they did wrong, but because either I don't know them that well, or because like it's just an easy way to diffuse a situation or not have a situation, you can always pose it as a question. And then if they're like, yeah, it does do that thing, then you can be like, really? Because da-da-da. But like, I understand you feel like I don't want to create any sort of tension. I don't want to have a confrontation here. There are definitely ways you can ask those questions without feeling like that person. And don't ever hesitate to ask for a ruling either. Like, judges, that's their job. That's what they're there for. It may be a pain because like you got to wait, especially in the webcam space and in person, but like, ask if you need to.
Yeah. I definitely think, and we've touched on that topic before, just because I feel like it's so pertinent in like any event that you do, whether it's something as small as a local or something as big as a regional or even nationals or whatever. It's so important to feel comfortable enough to do that. I get to the point where I'm just like, if I don't know a card, like if I just don't know the card, like I'm unfamiliar with it completely, I'll just ask my opponent to read it to me. Because then at that point, it's like they have to have the integrity to read it thoroughly and say, okay, this is the effects that it has, da 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 da. So then now again, it puts it back on me to say, okay, now that you've read it to me, I know what it is, I know what the effects are, I can now flesh out the game state. I wouldn't go as far as somebody would maliciously lie about what a card does or whatever. I know there's been instances of that and all that, but right. That aside, I think for the most part, thinking genuinely, it's like assuming your opponent is genuine and they read you what the card does. Sure. I feel like the biggest reason you guys may disagree or may put your own 2 cents in on this. I feel like a lot of people shy away from it, not necessarily because they're uncomfortable, but because they don't want to waste time. Because obviously asking for rulings, asking for, what effects are on board, reading cards out, especially with these online events, because you can't just simply pick it up and look at it really quick, deters them from doing that. But and I understand that, but at the same time, it's like, well, then your issue with potentially wasting time is now going to cost you the game because you didn't do your due diligence of like following up with that. So it's like you kind of have to be able to balance the two, I think. But at the same time, like you said, just get feel comfortable enough to just, like you said, either call a judge or just straight up ask your opponent to do that. And again, you can't feel like your opponent's going to think that you're thinking any one way about them, because you're entitled to asking them about a card, especially if you have no knowledge of what it does.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the big thing too. Is like, even if you are quote unquote wasting time, like, okay, but it's better to have wasted that time, got an answer, and been able to move forward than not. And then you lose and you find out later that wasn't how that was supposed to go and you could have won. Like, it eliminates the what ifs. And that way too, going forward, because if it's a popular deck that you're playing against, you just don't know the card because it's a tech or whatever the case may be, just ask the damn question. That's really what that comes down to.
Yeah, no, we could summarize this whole section just to ask, like whether it be a judge or your opponent or questions, just ask questions, because everyone gets affected differently. I feel like I'm really bad at seeing a great play in my hand and something on the field is immune or has protection. And it's like, if you just go into the play and then they're like, yeah, cool, I do this. And you're like, oh yeah, okay. And you're stuck into it. Like, not only are you behind, but you put yourself in a bad position and you'll feel worse about it, I think, for that reason. Whereas like if you just get hit with like an ace Digimon and it gets flashed and you're like, oh, okay, I could have known that was there, but I didn't know it was in its deck yet. Now I plan for this future or whatever. Like you're saying, taking information about a deck archetype or about how a specific interaction with a card works is very important.
Yeah.
And you can always ask how many cards in deck, hand, graveyard, anything. If you gotta ask it, you gotta ask it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to your point too about knowing the rulings for your deck, like if you're like me, or Dan, I think in particular, like to pick complicated ass decks that we kind of learn over time. Like for example, for me in the Digimon world, when Xmon first came out, Lord, I felt like I was the only one who knew how the deck freaking worked, with the evade and the timing and all that kind of stuff. Like, know that stuff inside and out, because people will, I'm not gonna say they're trying to be malicious about it, but like people will try you about it and like have you second guessing yourself. You really need to know, like, if you pick some of these decks, like how your interactions work, it will work out to your benefit as well, because it also lets you kind of get the jump on people when you pull certain moves and they don't really realize, oh, that is how that works. And that's again where you go and ask a judge to verify.
And I think that also speaks to the quote unquote skill gap between all these games, right? Like, because I feel like people would look at that and be like, oh, well, you're taking advantage of your opponent and this and that. It's not my responsibility for me to make sure my opponent knows what these cards do before we sit down and start playing, right? That's the whole point of like playing these games, right? I'm picking up a deck that, like, I'll use Frawley for an example. Frawley loves to play rogue decks, right? So like there are things that we've probably never seen, or a lot of interactions that we have no idea about, but that right there to me is him creating an advantage for himself, knowing that if people aren't going to be familiar with that and be able to get the jump on people. So when people go into those types of matchups thinking, oh, I've got my deck fleshed out, I know what I'm doing, and he's like, oh, well, you think you do, but my deck actually does this. Now they're completely thrown off. That's a competitive advantage in any one of these games. That's, whether you're meta prepping or whatever the case may be. So I don't think, I agree with you. I don't think it's anything like that. I think, but again, it goes back to the whole just ask. If it's something that you've never seen before, it's perfectly reasonable to just say, hey, look, I've never seen your deck before. I don't know. Can you just like kind of when you play these cards, walk me through it? And if you typically sit down against somebody who's cordial enough to be like, yeah, no problem. You just let me know what you need to know and we'll, go through it. I understand at bigger events, people tend to be a little bit more tense, and as the day goes on, and stakes get a little bit higher, things can get a little bit more difficult, more complicated. But even then, you got to stick to that, because especially if you're getting up there in the tables or you're getting up there in the standings, you can't afford to start backing off of it now, because this is when it matters the most. So yeah, I think you just got to stick with it, be consistent, and just just hold to it.
100%. So I think we can kind of, as an evolution of that, something about, the change that we've had in tournaments over the past few years with webcams. How would you guys recommend people set up their setup? Because I feel like we see a lot of different ones, some that are great and some that are not so great. How would you guys kind of go about walking somebody through just setting up like their webcam, like what their space should look like? Whoever wants to take the floor first.
Yeah, for me, I'll try to narrow it down to 3 things, because I was thinking of that as you're talking. I'm like, okay, let me try it. So I'll say 3 things. Number 1, I think is first and foremost important, is internet connection, right? Like you have nothing if you don't have internet. I don't care what kind of quality camera you have, what kind of lighting, what kind of decks, but if you don't have a solid internet connection, then none of it's going to matter. You could have an HD camera, it's going to lag on you. You could have a completely clean, play space, it's not going to matter. So I think internet connection is number 1. I think second past that would be camera quality and positioning. Frawley mentioned it earlier about like hand placement and all that. You definitely want to have it in a way where your opponent can at least see a decent view of where your hands are at all times, so that way things aren't coming off the screen, or hands aren't going above the head, or things like that. So I think camera, just stuff it up in here or something. So I think number 2 would definitely be camera quality / positioning, angling, and all of that. And then thirdly is just cleanliness. I mean, for me anyways. You guys, I'm sure you can come up with a bunch more, but for me it's just cleanliness. Like, make sure there's not a lot of clutter, there's not a lot of, because when you're playing, it's like you don't want to give your opponent shouldn't have to look at it and be like, what's part of the game and what's not, right? Because I've seen time, and I get it too, like some people don't have, but it's hard sometimes when you have a stack of cards here and a stack of cards here, and then you have your deck here. It's like, well, what? Because then I don't know if you pull from this, is that part of your deck? Is that part of, I don't know. So I think that is another big important factor to say, hey, look, at least, and I'm not saying that you have to keep it like that all the time. If you're not playing a tournament, your desk can be a mess. Your whatever table you have, I don't care. But during a tournament setting or just move it off to the side. I don't care. You put it on the floor if you have to, but just clean off your space so that way it's very definitive of what is your play area, right? That's what I would say.
I'm glad you made that point about internet connection, because clean play space was one of my first ones. And then you also doubled down on it by like, but also you should have a clean play space. So I extra respect that. No, I think that's perfect. Some of the weird ones you might not be prepared for is like your lighting in general could be good, but most of these tournaments happen early in the day. If you have natural light or stuff, like there might be additional reflectiveness or shininess that you're not accounting for. That's one I've experienced personally, of like having to block out a curtain during games to make sure that they could see my cards. Like, there will always be unexpected stuff, so just make sure that you like try to take it a day before if you can, and just like set it up, see how it looks. Positioning the camera is good. I like a top-down view. Like personally, like I understand like laptops or like phone holders, like there are specific things you can get to make sure that your stuff is viewed properly, but you can kind of creatively prop something too. Make sure whatever you're using for your camera is plugged in, because the camera dying is gonna cost you a game. And it might do it anyways if you find it like jumpy, or like make sure you update some drivers. But do this all like as the days are leading up. Don't do this the day of. Don't try to update all your drivers and all your devices and then lose your webcam or something like that. And then make sure you're blowing up your opponent's side of the field on whatever your view is, so you have a clear. You don't have to know what your side of the field is. It's in front of you. Just make theirs as big as it can. And yeah, like you're gonna have to read the DP and effects and stuff, and that'll ask you for questions. But like setup wise, I think it's just also I love to do, and I got into the habit of it so much I still do it, is laying down your hand when it is not your turn. When it's your opponent's turn. Games like Yu-Gi-Oh! I get you can't do that because like you gotta respond, you gotta be able to like shift or whatever. But for us, like when we can't really play on the opponent's turn, like just laying your hand down and like in frame on the mat is really nice because you can immediately count how many cards in hand in case they need to. Oh, and dice to indicate shields. Like whether it's Digimon, whether it's Dragon Ball, whether it's One Piece, whatever it is, whatever you got to represent how much you got protecting you, a dice representing the number. So that way they're not like, oh, I only have to hit him 5 times, but it's like, no, I have a 6 that like kind of is lost in it. Or your sleeves are like a dark color so they can bleed into each other.
Yep.
Yeah, that sleeve thing. That's part of why I use the art sleeves, honestly. So that they're very, very. You can't miss it, right? I think to you guys' point earlier, lighting. I think, oh my god, please understand that for some people, like reflection off your stuff is just a thing that's gonna happen. But for the love of God, figure out how to fix it, because like there's nothing more frustrating for me when I'm playing against somebody when they have a setup that's a little, the camera's a little awkward, like it's kind of like a laptop camera that's turned slightly downward so that it, like that stuff, it drives me nuts. It's the film production person in me, but also just like it's frustrating. So try and figure out that lighting and try and figure out how to reduce the amount of glare on your cards as much as you possibly can. I know that for some people, like you just can't. Just because of your setup, and you shouldn't be, I don't expect you to go out and buy like all kinds of stuff to make it happen, but really adjust your setup and figure out where you can use natural light as well as, touch lighting as well to kind of like just help make it so that we can see what's on your screen, because sometimes that's like the hardest part. And Farley, I do like your idea a lot of like keeping your card, like your hand, if you're not holding it, like just leaving it in the middle of your field somewhere where they can see it and see, okay, that's how many cards are in your hand. And that way too, it just avoids the whole, wait, where are your cards at? Where's your hand at? You don't have to really worry about like people questioning whether you're cheating and pulling cards from your mouth or something else, because people have gotten mighty creative. That was a skill. People have gotten mighty creative about how they add cards to their hand or resurrect things from the graveyard, or pull things from under other cards. It's fascinating to see how people try to game the system. But my biggest thing with webcam setup is just like lighting, because I just want to be able to see the damn cards. And just keep in mind, y'all, too, to never hesitate to tell a judge, I can't see what's happening. And asking them to do something about it, whether that be, I hate to say, DQing your opponent or making it so that they lose. But y'all, a few years ago, saw me struggle against someone whose camera wasn't working, and the judge, rather than calling the match, made us play the game out where we had to type everything. So, like, yeah, that was pain, and I don't know why we did this, and it was the worst game of Digimon I ever had in my life. So if there's ever a technical issue, do not feel bad. Do not feel bad about telling them, hey, I'm not playing, man. I can't do this. My setup is fine. Yours isn't. And we just not playing this game.
Yeah, because you also have to understand too, like that's part of like the rule, like it's the official like Bandai rules for webcam events. No matter what game you're playing, is you have to have a setup that falls within certain parameters and guidelines. Again, like you were saying, not everybody has like the perfect setup, and you can't have the expectation of, I'm going to go out and get this. And, obviously like we can, like the three of us can attest to it because we've streamed and, things like that. So we're accustomed to that type of, more professional looking setup. But even that aside, it's like you can get a setup to that falls within the requirements of what Bandai sets out. So that way you shouldn't have any issues. But if you do, and you are aware of those rules and regulations, as put forth by Bandai, then yeah, you shouldn't feel awkward or bad about it to say, hey, look, I'll try to do my best, but I cannot make out what your side of the field is. I've had to play against people that like their board is literally sideways. Like I'm playing like from a side angle, and it's like you're not supposed to do that. It's supposed to be front facing or like Adrian was saying, like lighting is a big deal, right? Or, you know, if the camera is really, really laggy, like I get it. I understand that's a problem for some people, but they know that going in. They know they have to have, and that's why I went back to internet connection. Like you have to have a stable connection in order to maintain a quality video all throughout, because it is a stipulation that if you disconnect for even, you know, a second, that is grounds for a match
Game
loss.
Yeah.
You know, a game loss or potentially match loss.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you know, it could go further depending on, you know, the situation. So I think that's really, really important, and that's why I'll kind of round this back to like when we were talking about the whole tournament thing. Practice, like in like with like a group setting, or even just you know, if you only have one testing part or whatever, get those things fleshed out so you know, like, hey, if I'm going to have any issues, these are what they're going to be. These are what I need to look out for. So that way you're already prepped for it the night before, 2 days before, whatever it is. So you know going into it, I shouldn't have any issues, right? Or you minimize it as much as you possibly can.
No, those are definitely some good ones. To tie it back to our judge point, like if it's that, if you are so uncomfortable, or not uncomfortable, if you feel like it is beyond reasonable for what they are presenting, just getting a second set of eyes on it from a judge can at least, like, if nothing happens of it, nothing happens of it. Okay, cool. I deal with what I'm dealing with, but something could, and you aren't gonna really get that just by being like, hey man, I can't really see. And I hate to be this guy to talk about it this way, because like obviously I don't want to gatekeep or like keep people from doing it if they have the access, because laptops have webcams. But like, I don't know, there is a little bit of like, everyone's paying to be here, man. I kind of wish like I could see what was going on.
Yeah. I think the laptop issue really is just like, dog, unless you got like a Mac that you paid quite a bit for, where they have like the setting to where it has like a top down view or whatever. If you got your laptop, you turned it slightly down, then okay, it's just very difficult to see. I can't see your hand. Like there's just a lot happening there. So you just got to invest a little bit, and ideally your participation prizes should pay for what you invested. Ideally, fingers crossed.
I mean, I don't want to sound like an old meme, but you guys have phones, right?
Like, that is true. Yeah,
you guys have phones, right?
I will say this without because I don't want to get into the whole like, but I mean, I've only got one really good quality Logitech camera that I finally invested in once I was like streaming for a while. But the rest of all of my webcams that I use are cheap Logitech ones that I got like from Walmart.
Yes,
and
sir.
the stand that I have
Yes,
on
sir.
it's literally a spring mount that hooks onto or that just like goes onto like your desk, and you just like tighten it down. I think it was like $12 off of Amazon, and the Logitech camera fits right onto it, and it can literally give you that top down view. So like you said, I get that it's like, well, I can't, all I can do, and I get all of that, but you know, going into these webcam events, that is part of, like, you're already investing in the game. If you're going to play technically the online version of it, that is part of it. It comes with it. You have to be expectant of that, right? If you don't want to deal with all that, then you're going to have to just go play IRL, and you don't have to worry about it. But with webcams, that comes along with it. It's just part of, you know.
I was gonna say the last thing you want is to get really far, and that because of your setup you lose. Like you know what I mean? Because you have that person, which is within their right, who's like, dog, I can't. Like your setup it's unacceptable for me. Like I can't do nothing with this. Some people will just grin, play, and just not care, and other people will. And you're better off just having it set up to where people can't say shit. That's really how I think about it. It's like, even if it is a CYA, just do it so you ain't got to worry about nothing. Because the last thing you want too is to be like in a final and like Bandai's like, wait a second, we can't stream this. Look at this angle. You know what I mean? Like, it's just things like that that could come up, or not just Bandai, any really TO really who might be like, hey, wait, you know, this isn't really working. But yeah.
I think all of our points could kind of be like, everything we were done was like, we're gonna be proactive, and in any we're gonna be on time. We're gonna have our deck submitted. We're gonna do testing. Like, look, this is not gonna happen for you on the first time. I'm gonna tell you that right now. And it might not even happen for you on the fifth. But like, these are at least like from what we've been doing, what I think are the tips that we found the most helpful to get to where we are. Because like, You're gonna be proactive on everything, on rulings, on knowing your deck, on getting to the venue, on registering, and that's gonna put you already ahead of, let's say, 30% of the people at that tournament. So already you have an advantage for doing something that just gets you prepared and ready.
I will say this. I will say this in terms of webcam events specifically, at least for me, my setup that I have here, granted I have changed rooms just recently, but my setup literally looked exactly the same from when, like, because I like what my setup looked like, so I literally made it look exactly the same in this new room. I haven't touched this since the first time I set it up over almost 2 years ago now. So it's like, once you, like Farley was saying, the first time there might be the growing pains or like trying to figure it all out. But once you set it up and it's working, it's a set it and forget it. You don't have to think about it. Your camera's set, everything's good. Like, and you just leave it. You know, I get some people like it's dual purpose and it's like, you know, well, I also use this computer for that and this and that. Okay, well then just take, I mean, you guys can't see it because I don't have my table down, but I got so to the point to where I wanted to know exactly where my mat was on my table that I literally put like character stickers down to mark out where my mat goes, you know, and it just kind of like accessorizes like my desk. But when I look at it, I know exactly where the corners of my mat need to go. So if I ever have to move it for whatever reason, or like when I moved my desk from one room to the next and I had to clear everything off, I didn't have to worry about where my mat went. I just put it right back down where it was. So little simple things like that you might not think about can really go a long way in like just taking out all of the stress of like having to reset up time and time again and potentially running into issues.
It might sound silly, but I invested in some ergonomic arms for my desk be on either side of my playmat. And when you're going for like 6 hours, it is a godsend because you're stuck in this chair, but like you have something else that's a little higher to rest on. And like you can, at least mine, like you can kind of like pivot the ends. So like you can put them together and you can like put your arms on it. Like it gives you a different rest, again, to keep like mental and like, you know, comfortable.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
It's silly things that like that, like you're not going to know until you get there, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trial and error. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Unless anybody has any additional thoughts on prepping and webcam stuff, I was thinking we could jump over to some more Digimon specific stuff with Digimon Liberator, the webcomic that seems like it's impossible to freaking read because the site doesn't want to load properly. Yeah, anybody have any initial thoughts? Hey, y'all probably can tell mine.
Oh, man. Should we start with the positives? Positives? There are some cool Digimon design. Some of the characters look pretty cool. I have a new line for a Digimon I did not super care about, and now I love his new line, and I'm actually hype about it. Pros. Cons, there's some stupid Digimon designs. The website appears to load each image in a row, and it takes a while. And I thought it was just because I was like out on data, but no, like on fully like wired in, it takes forever for things to load. And I really wish they would have chose like. I guess back to the pros. The art is pretty amazing, actually. Like character designs and Digimon designs. There's some bangers on that. But yeah, it's for having Chapter 0 and Chapter 1 out. It is a hell of a launch.
Yeah. I just wish they just used like Webtoon, TappyToon, Tapas. So many different Webtoon platforms they could have used to host it on. I get it, they probably didn't want to share the money with nobody, but like, or the rights, publishing rights. But it's like, bro, like right now the site, it's just like, it's so interesting. Like I want to read this, but it's so difficult because at least for me, and I guess you as well, for Ollie, and I assume a bunch of other people, like it literally takes forever to load just trying to scroll down and read it. And like, it doesn't even load by page. It's like an image, and sometimes it cuts right in the middle of the text, so it's like I can't even follow what's happening. So I really just need them to either update their website so that the images don't have to load that way, or host it with someone who like that's their whole business model is webcomics. Because damn, this looks cool, and I hate the fact that I have to like go on a mission to try and read it.
I want to know the connection too, because it seems to try to connect the Digimon card game to being this next thing that's happening, where they're going to like an immersive sim.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm not sure where it's going, and they're actually releasing a deck box apparently based off the one in the comic. If you make it that far into the comic,
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
I mean, I guess what's kind of cool though is like, this is like a double-edged sword, right? Like, are we annoyed at it because like the hosting is dog shit, or are we really? Is it so popular that it's also like taking a while to load because so many people are trying to access it? So like, I could see a bit, because they originally did tweet, I believe earlier today, that the site crashed just based off traffic. So there's a good chance that like a little bit of it is that.
Let's
but
hope it's that.
let's call it. There are scoops of both.
Yeah,
Clearly.
yeah.
There are scoops of both clearly.
So, just out of curiosity, because as you guys were talking, because I'll be transparent. I didn't read it prior to us hopping on here, but now when you guys are talking, I'm like, let me try to just pull it up on my end and just see. I don't know if they've cleaned up the issue, but I'm scrolling through it pretty seamlessly now, and like it's like loaded pretty good. So, like, if you go too fast, then it'll take a second to catch up. But like literally, just like going panel by panel, there's no lag.
For you?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's no and I will agree with you, Frawley. The art on this is insane. Yeah, this is definitely a must read for me. Yeah, like I can see now, like I got about halfway down, and it's starting to buffer a little bit, but I got through half of it just in the time that you guys were talking, and it was fine.
Huh. Yeah, I'm still having some issues, but that could just be on my side of things potentially.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's doing the same for me. But yeah, I just want to
it
read it,
started.
man.
It's really unfortunate that the very opening panel is it's about to begin, and now people have just been dunking on it, where it's like, if it would load. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does look like it's cleaned up a little bit. Like it's something I wish I could read on mobile though, where like reading it on mobile is like absolutely a pain. And I thought Agent was going to hate it just because within the first opening couple panels, spoiler alert, War Greymon loses.
Boo! Now I'm not gonna read it.
I'll say it's about
He's a
time.
pretender.
Jeez.
He's a pretender.
All right,
No.
Dan.
No, I'm excited for this because like to tie into Liberator, like the starter decks are being slowly leaked, and we know what's happening. We know the full line of both main characters Digimon now. If we want to bring up the new Impmon line, I think the new Impmon line is like one of my. It's not my favorite, but like I didn't realize how much this Impmon is like Impmon into Growlmon into Wargrowl into Megidra, and just to mirror the Gallantmon or the Guillaumon line is really sick to see lined up actually.
Yeah, I feel like it worked out probably better than they even anticipated. Like, it looks really cool.
Yeah.
Looks really cool. So that's definitely something that I am curious to see how it's going to play out in the actual game, like what skills it's going to have and all that kind of stuff. But it's pretty dope looking.
The only thing we know so far is that the Impmon goes into Dark Dragons and another type at a reduced cost of 1 when they digivolve. And they also spoiled his Tamer, who he's paired up with. And her effect allows it to digivolve, I think, from trash. So it's like one of those red-purple from trash Digivolution decks again.
Okay.
But the War Growl with the speakers, I don't know, man. It's doing something for me. I'm so...
I mean,
like, why do I like
sick.
this?
It is pretty sick. Like, it is a dope concept.
Megidra's an underused like design anyways. I love giving it a bit of new life too.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't, I mean, to be, like Dan said, to be as transparent as I can be, I am just excited also because it's going to add to Mill. Like, I know it's going to add to Mill.
Boo!
100%. Boo!
Kill it now. Yeah, it's definitely gonna be some mill nastiness. It's fine. It's fun.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know how much of Liberator you read. So far, I've been enjoying what I could get through. I think I'm maybe halfway through chapter 0. By our next podcast, I'll have read at least the first 2 chapters. Because I was really excited for Seekers, which kind of parallels this, or like is similar to what they were doing. But this is what I wanted from Seekers. Like, if not animated, at least give me a comic. Give me action that I can like reading it is cool. Like, reading is nice, but I just think the Digimon medium translates way better this way.
Yes, 100%. I mean, the artwork is really nice. This just looks like a good revitalization of the brand, and I'm curious to see what this means for client time or whatever they're gonna do. Because I feel like this is a really good primer to test out some ideas and put like a. It wouldn't surprise me if the game, like the digital client, is like a legitimate game. Like, it just wouldn't surprise me if it's got like a story mode, all that kind of shit. It just wouldn't surprise me if it's more than what they've done for Fusion World, because historically with Digimon, that just seems like the types of moves they make for the brand. You can argue whether that's good or bad, but like, they always seem to try and go big rather than just putting out some little thing for people to enjoy when it comes to Digimon. That's what it seems like historically.
Yeah, I just as I mean, as a TCG like player, like solely, like I think I would appreciate that, just because it's more Digimon content, right? Like, it works both things. It allows you to just expand on the lore, but then also, this is gonna sound bad, but also as just like a content creator standpoint, like you can really like kind of go down that route and see like, you know, what you can explore in those avenues. So yeah, I agree with you. I think when we've seen it with Digimon, it's like it takes them a while to get us anything, but when they do, they don't just like put out little spurts of things. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy the Fusion World client, but yeah, after playing it a couple times, it's like, okay, like this is it. Like, there's, you know, like it's literally just that. It's a client that you can get on. You can play some of the stuff or whatever. They have obviously some things to really still flesh out with it or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if the Digimon client, as kind of a stem off of like now Liberator, just wouldn't be a possibility. I think that's definitely something that's kind of turned the corner, I think.
Yeah.
I will say too, like with this, I want to go back, editor's note, to like, I don't know what episode, probably only like 2 episodes ago, when we were talking about the Liberator, we were talking about stuff. I'm like, I've already called that I think this leads to the client. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm fine for this to end up on poorly aged things, but like, it just seems like such a good precursor on getting people interested in it, and it heavily involves the hard card game clearly, and then like we hopefully just bring people in, because like that's the gateway, I think. But they might not feel the same way I do. But Digimon just keeps pumping out content. I've noticed, like, I'm surprised they did like the movie, and then they were doing Liberator, and they've been doing Seekers, and they're still doing Vital Bracelets. Like, they're so diversified. And there's also like just V-Pets in general that like they are really divided attention wise, but it is cool to see like what every time they announce a new project, I'm at least vaguely interested.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, what people get mistaken with a lot is, you know, you hear a lot like, oh, Digimon is the property in Japan and Bandai that's like not, you know, it's not performing well or whatever. But it's like, if you actually look at what they pump their resources in, Digimon's actually one of the highest ones there to do. I mean, in terms of like, I mean, I'm a huge Dragon Ball Super fan, but I can tell you right now, they put definitely more time, money, and resources into Digimon content as a whole than they do Dragon Ball. I understand there's different like I understand like the differences in each one, but like you guys were saying, like, I don't see Digimon going anywhere, because everything that they use or that they create in that world can all be tied back, can all like be used in like the TCG concept as well, right? So yeah, I think with that, it's like I don't worry about the game as a whole. I do worry, like Frawley said, that there's that little caveat that's like maybe their attention's a little too divided. That could potentially cause some issues, but looking on the bright side, it's like, look, at the end of the day, it's just more and more Digimon content. and like things for us to explore. So let's just like take it as with what it is and see where it goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing too with Digimon that we have to also remember in some of these other brands is that, like, I would argue that they put more money into Dragon Ball overall, but I do see what you're saying about Digimon in the sense of, like, it just never made it big outside of Japan. Like, it's big, but it's not nearly as big. Somebody brought up that Duel Masters, which I don't know if y'all remember that game, is still a thing that's running strong in Japan. It just died outside of Japan. They still have sets. It's still the same thing. It's like a thing, and it's not going anywhere. I think in Japan, it's just that, like, card games and these sort of more niche things are not niche. They are, like, a part of the culture, as far as, like, everybody knows what they are, or I shouldn't say everybody, but it's a thing that people actively participate in a much bigger way. And I think Digimon is just one of those things. Gundam is another great example. Gundam is a massive IP, and I would argue that it is popular outside of Japan, not in the same way that Dragon Ball or Sailor Moon is, but in Japan, Gundam's a big freaking deal. It's not, something you can just, everybody knows what Gundam is, So I think that, like, it's not going anywhere, and that they will find a way to support it. And when it does reach that next tier, it's not going to be some little thing that's going to be forgettable at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we hope, right?
Yeah, well, I will say this. I did see this on one of the Facebook groups. Somebody posted it because, again, you have these, like, Digimon Doomsday posts or whatever, and they looked at the top 15 card games specifically that are now, this is Japan specific, so obviously we're not talking about, like, the Western world, but in Japan, of course, Pokemon's number one, but I think Digimon ranked somewhere right outside the top 10. I think it was like 11 or 12. Dragon Ball Super wasn't even on the list
because they don't have one.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, in popularity, like in terms of, like, not just necessarily playing it, but, like, literally just as like being recognized as a card game.
Oh yeah, because they don't have a card game is what I mean. Like, they don't have one.
Yeah,
there is.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's what I'm saying is like so looking at it that way, it's like I feel like that's why they are putting. I would argue to say that they're still trying to mainline Digimon because of the popularity that it has in Japan, knowing that it's like, okay, Dragon Ball, that's taken care of, like, North America, the western side of the world, right? Because, like, we don't have it here, we're not going to worry about it. Like, it's good over there, so that's why it's so popular over here. And with Digimon, it's like they can see the potential of it because of how popular it still is in Japan, and people still play it over here. It's like there's still traction for the game. It's just like you said. I think the way they go about it and, like, what directions they take it in is really what's gonna ultimately determine, like, what happens with it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think when people say these Bandai games, they're going to die. I'm sorry, they're not going to die. They may not be popular in the States anymore, but they won't die. Like, no. Yes, Bandai's doing a lot with One Piece, Union Arena, Digimon, Dragon Ball Fusion World, which is also in Japan. That's the whole reason they're going to say it's not. But, like, that's a big part of why they dropped it, because Masters didn't exist in Japan, the game that existed before. That's a whole other thing. But, like, all these games that they are releasing are going to be very popular in Japan first, and that's probably one of the most important things to them, because they know that once they master that core audience, like, then everyone else will be, equally important, which is why I think we're only now seeing global syncs for a lot of these games of, like, cool, we got our audience that we needed, our core audience, we got our test audience to see how everything's gonna work. Now we can do everything internationally at the same time, and still have our super core audience that will never disappear unless there's a cataclysm, I guess.
I do think Digimon is a transformative property because every show kind of takes place somewhere else, and, like, with different people. That's, like, one of the extra additional things about these little projects they can do is they can flesh out a game, give them a different line, do some new stuff, like this Impmon line, which will breathe life into it. But if this flops, it doesn't matter. But we can still reference that in a video game later, or we can still put that on a DIN bracelet. Like, it's not to say it's recyclable, but
it is.
Like a Gundam. like a Gundam show. Every Gundam show is different, but there's a lot of similar elements, and we cook up new stuff, and then that all applies to the total canon, which is the art book.
Yeah.
And I'll go as far as saying, like, if you want to compare apples to apples, it's like, okay, well, and not that Bandai cares, because I know they don't, but you have Bandai who they're like Agent was saying, their core. No, you'll see what I'm saying. You'll see what I'm getting at, because I didn't mean it like that. They came out like that. No. So their core audience, right, is their local scene in Japan, right? So every Bandai game that they release, and like you said, that's why they, with Fusion World and all these other games, like even Pokemon is as popular as Pokemon is globally, they still have their biggest audience. Like their biggest turnout is actually in Japan. We like their tournaments over there, their player count and everything is still, I want to say the last time I looked, was still highest in Japan. So when you look at it that way, they're focusing on their market, which is Japan, and then at that point it'll end up bleeding out through the rest of the world. You could say the same thing when you look at a property like Fantasy Flight Games that's now doing Star Wars Unlimited, or Disney with Lorcana. Like those are Western based companies and IPs that are doing the same thing, but over here they're prioritizing their market here to ideally globalize, right? Like they want those games to be everywhere, but it's going to start somewhere. So I think that's what I meant by Bandai not caring, is like they don't care about the competition. They're not like, Star Wars has got North America, so we're going to worry about Japan. No, they don't care about that. But my point is like that's I feel like where they're prioritizing is like they're going to flesh out their Japan market first, and then start moving west. And then like Agent was saying, it's like these sync ups of like we're already seeing with Digimon. This year we're going to be on the same set list as Japan. Yep. So like that right there to me is indicative of the fact that is what they're working towards, right? So I think doing that, whether that includes digital clients, whether that's sync ups of other games, releases of new games, like whatever the case is, that's their business model in general. Like that's just how they do their releases.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It makes sense. You play to your strengths, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just Liberator, and this whole thing is interesting. I remember a lot of people being like, we don't want this. It's not helpful. And I think it's going to be great for the Digimon IP. I think Digimon just needs to hit its stride again internationally for them to really invest some of this money that people want them to do. Because I think that's when it makes sense to have a client, when you have international success to cover those costs and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, yes, they're competing. Everybody's competing for eyeballs and time and money. That's just the way business is. But I think for some of these IP, once they hit their stride, I just don't see these games dying in the traditional sense. I just don't. Not anytime soon. Even Dragon Ball Masters, I don't see dying anytime soon. And that's not even in Japan.
No, that's fair. I mean, that might just become a thing of people just still play it because, it's what they like. And they don't want to necessarily adjust to the new thing. I think like, if we want to put like a death knell, like something that potentially Bandai faces is like everything, the more you release what's new and hype, like something will eventually get left behind, or like something will dry up. Like I haven't played enough Union Arena. I hope it's good, but like that's one of the ones I see on the chopping block, or something, or Battle Spirits. I don't even know about. They own Battle Spirits. It's so cheap they probably don't even have to take it off. I don't know what their business model is like, but I guess the thing you got to suffer from is what is new and shiny, and whether or not people still play this while there are new and shiny things. We'll see if it can keep. Yeah, the spot it has. I think this has been a really refreshing year for Digimon personally so far, and like I guess going into this new year, and the sync up is totally cool because I think it makes way more sense to print the majority of your product all at once and then distribute it instead of just going, hey man, we can't get this to North America in a bit. I bet it's annoying to ship and do. Like, I wonder if the sync will cause pre-release issues or anything, because like Bandai's had a couple of those before, but I think that it speaks more to just like smart business of like, if we just do it all at the same time, it's fine. Like we can just get it out as long as we don't end up with like a North American shortage or an Australia shortage like we had a couple times.
Yeah, I'll actually I feel like I'm gonna combine Frawley's point with Agent's point here, because like the games that I feel like you were talking about, I agree with you, that get left behind for like the new and shiny thing are the things that don't have companions with them. And I don't mean digital clients or anything. I mean literally like other properties to go along with it to keep it fresh and keep it on people's minds, right? So like with this kind of circling back to Liberator, right? Like this being something new. Yeah, it's not necessarily TCG related in the sense that it's like, you know, but it technically is, right? Is it's keeping the property of Digimon fresh on people's minds. So when people are reading through Liberator, and if it's good, right? Like let's assume that it's good. So far, it seems like it is. Let's assume in its entirety that it's good. It's going to keep people positive about Digimon as a property as a whole, right? That's not to say that there's anything necessarily wrong with, let's say, Battle Spirits, like you used that as an example. It's just Battle Spirits didn't really go, I feel like didn't really take off or do anything because there wasn't anything else to kind of accompany with it, right? It's just kind of like its thing. You can talk about that. Like, I think that's why, honestly, Star Wars has blown up as much as it has, is just because of the fact of how big of a property it is, how many this is a conversation for a whole nother thing, but like regardless of the quality of like the things that they've released, the fact that they've pumped out so much content in terms of shows and movies and all this other stuff and novel, you know, whatever, novelizations and everything like that, and people are staying fresh and current just on Star Wars as a whole. When they have a game come out, it's like, oh, I get to play this game that I'm reading this book, or I'm watching the show, or I'm doing this thing. It's like, it keeps it all kind of relative, right? That's why Pokemon has stuck around for as long as it has, because Pokemon's never going anywhere. They keep releasing new video games, new seasons, new, you know, everything, you know? So it's like things like that. If Digimon continues to do that, I don't think it's ever going to, quote unquote, die out. I saw in one of the comments on the Digimon Doomsday post, and the person said it like so eloquently, but it was so simple, was a game dies when people stop talking about it. And the reason people stop talking about it is because there's nothing new to talk about. So Liberator coming out is something new in the Digimon space to talk about. It's going to keep that fresh, right?
Yeah.
So same thing with Dragon Ball. People are up and down about Dragon Ball Daima, but guess what? People are still talking about it, and that's going to be something new that they could potentially add to Masters and or both Fusion World. Like, so those games are not going to die because you have new things coming out with it. So I think as long as they do that, I would definitely say quality is definitely a factor. But if they continue to do that, I don't think we have really anything to worry about the quote unquote like big popularized games, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I'd even say for Battle Spirits, what people also have to remember is Battle Spirits in Japan for Bandai is their longest running game. It came out in 2008 and it's still around. So when people are like, oh, Bandai doesn't, like, I guess, but like their track record at home is pretty impressive. So they can do it. And they tried Battle Spirits in the States. It just didn't work at the time. I think it was in 2009. I mean, that was basically the years of, you know, if you're not Pokemon, Magic, or Yu-Gi-Oh, you ain't going nowhere. That's just how it was. So I don't know. I think that like even things like Battle Spirit Saga, it's like, but as long as you have enough of a dedicated player base, and to your point, they're not paying licensing fees, like it's theirs. So you might as well keep printing it. If people are going to come and play the event and you get more bodies in a room to look at your other games and you're able to feed other parts of your business, you might as well keep it going. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that like when people talk about the death of a game, to your point, Dan, it's a lot of it just feels like doom and gloom of like, okay, but how true is that? Because you got to forget that your little pocket of where you live is a microcosm, right? It's like, it's not, and when I say it's not real, but like it is not emblematic of what's happening globally. Just because the game isn't popular where you are, there's a shit ton of other countries that are equally important, or at least in terms of player base, that like are still factored into those decisions. So, you know, I don't know. I think only time will tell, but for the Digimon of it all, I think Liberator is going to be great for just the brand, and I hope that it spawns more Digimon stuff, just so that Digimon can continue to kind of not just be a niche anime. Because I would argue that Digimon still globally feels very niche compared to other big things like Dragon Ball, One Piece, like all those things. Digimon feels like it's people know what it is, but like they don't know what it is past the season 1 and 2 when they were a kid and was on Fox Kids or on, you know what I mean? Like,
well, and
like
that was
movie,
the other thing.
right?
Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But like it shares. Maybe the problem is that we continue to age because time continues to march forward. But like, there's new hotness out, right? Digimon was cool in the '90s, and I will stick by that forever.
yes.
And I'm like, and like you said, like with transient prosperities or stuff like that, Dan, I think you put it really well because like I'm back on the watch life. Like I'm back raising Digimon, like on the watch, trying to work out, trying to get in shape. So like, and I'm rewatching stuff. So if it keeps in the zeitgeist, if I think about it every now and then, or want to check up on news of what's going on, then yeah, it keeps the property alive. Whereas like a movie comes out and goes. Though I would like to see how that movie did in North America, because I know it was like very limited release or whatever. But like, I'm interested to see like what the box office numbers would be for that. I'll put in a list of something I should look up at some point.
What was that? Digimon Adventure, right?
Digimon Adventure 02.
I don't think we're both trying to look.
That's perfect. But it was a super limited release, so like I couldn't imagine. But like I wonder what that says about eyeballs and like people who are willing to go see stuff like that. Like, because I'm sure. Oh, go ahead.
No, go.
No, my point was that like I haven't even seen that movie yet. Like it didn't come to a theater near me that I could have went to. But I wonder if that's like a gauge of hype level or like I want to know. I just wish we had better metrics for like what it is, because all we have is speculation of like zone to zone to zone and playing and like I don't know.
Well,
we thought card games were gonna die down. Like
and then COVID. But yeah. No, you're right. So the box office for it worldwide is only 1.5 million.
Oh, what's cost to make?
Oh, I don't think we see those figures. Yeah, we can't see those figures. But it also doesn't help when it has such a limited release and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's a lot of other issues there. I'm sure that distribution costs were not fun, especially importing it or exporting it from Japan. A lot of that kind of stuff probably definitely complicates it. Where they're probably going to make their money is through licensing it to different streaming services and platforms in Japan.
Put on Crunchyroll.
Make a lot of their money. So yeah, it didn't do super well, I would argue, just based on the numbers. But like, it also is kind of skewed and unfair since like it didn't even get like a full rollout. Like it didn't even get. I would argue that Godzilla, which makes more sense because it's a bigger IP, fight me, got a bigger rollout internationally than Digimon did for sure.
Well, you also have to for all these points too. You also have to remember is like, you know, the people who are going to see Digimon are going to be, you know, people in, I would assume more so our age bracket, right? Because like Digimon is a property that resonates more with our generation than I feel like it does with like the younger generation now, because they just don't know too much about it. And then you, like you said, you have a limited release with not much marketing or whatever. I think those figures would be largely skewed, like you said, to not really be indicative of like what it probably could have done to its full potential. I think if it gets licensed to be on streaming platforms and wherever it ends up, that will end up being like the true test of like, okay, what are the watch hours, what are the, you know, downloads, what are the subscriptions and all those kind of things. Once those numbers kind of like start telling, that'll start telling you, okay, like this is how well it's doing.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it did rank. Sorry to cut you off, Raleigh, but it did rank really well. Okay, here's a good example. So if the worldwide gross lifetime was 1.5 million, 792K came from Japan. Basically, more than half was Japan, which makes sense. And it ranked fifth, and then it ranked in week one. It ranked fifth. I don't know what other movies came out around that time. And week 2, it ranked 10th. But a bunch of stuff must have come out around that time as well, because the weekend gross. Yeah, so we have to see what else came out around that time. But like, it didn't do bad in terms of its ranking. It just didn't break past Japan in a meaningful way.
I mean, regardless of, I think you broke it down in a cool way that I'm now doubling down on, because this is something that a company that's big enough can just like throw out there, and it's like, what was it, 1.5 million? It's like, we got 1.5. Let's just put it into a movie. Here you go, budget, and then like it happens. They do it all, and then they're like, cool, like we're gonna have a little limited release, and we'll do some stuff, and then we'll do some promo tie-ins stuff for the TCG, and that'll work out, and then we'll put it on streaming services and do it that way. Like, I think it's just something that they lob out where like, this is not supposed to explode. This is just going to go out and get exactly all the money we needed it to do, and it's just gonna be this other ball that's up in the air, and it's gonna do that while we're working on other stuff. Yeah. It was just like a good lob.
Hell, this doesn't even include U.S. data.
I would almost argue that like, because I'll say this from what I saw no marketing, no like anything in regard to like like as a standalone movie. I saw it marketed as promo material for the card game, right? So like, if your primary let's say North American audience is the TCG community, that is so niche and so limited that is going to directly correlate with the numbers that you're seeing, right? Yeah. Obviously, like, that's generalizing, but my point being is like, you're not like Frawley said, you're not putting it out there for a general audience like you were saying, like Godzilla, in that sense that like is recognized by everyone. You're just kind of like Frawley said, lobbing it out there and just seeing what it gets, and then eventually it'll kind of maybe spawn into different things. I feel like that's ultimately what it was intended to do, and I think it did do that.
Yeah, like I said, the U.S. data isn't even here, and that's probably because it was distributed by because it was a Fathom Events thing, right? Like, it wasn't like a traditional screening, so that also skews the data. So we don't even know what it made from the U.S. I imagine it's not $1.5 million. Again,
data's got to be real small.
I mean, this is just from Spain, Colombia, Japan, Hong Kong, South Korea, Australia, Vietnam, and New Zealand. That's all the data that's on IMDb for this film that comes out to 1.5 million. So, like, it's kind of what wasn't set up to be a box office smash, just based off of these numbers, which isn't a surprise, because that's what happens to a lot of anime movies anyway, right? They're meant for really the Asia Pacific, APAC area, territories, and then, like, if they go outside, and cool, they did well. That's just kind of how it seems to be.
It's kind of related, but kind of off topic. I'd be kind of curious to see what Demon Slayer did open in box office, because Demon Slayer is a huge anime property that's outside of a TCG community, and if it's anywhere close to that, then that kind of gives you like a comparison and perspective of like, okay, a very well known, well, I say very well known, but a fairly well known anime property.
So
also, Demon Slayer going to be in Union Arena. Look out for
it.
So Demon Slayer did significantly better, which isn't surprising. Worldwide, it did 44 million. In the U.S. alone, it was 17. And then internationally, it was 26. Yeah.
So that's not surprising at all. But then you also have to factor in the fact that that's coming on the heels of it having a relevant or not relevant, but like current seasons of the show, and like a wider audience that is already engaged in the property, right? As opposed to, again, marketing probably solely to, at least in North America anyways, the TCG community, because they're just
sorry, I just looked up. I
thought I lagged out.
No, I looked at Mugen Train for 2020. The worldwide for that one was 450 million. Domestic was only gross was 49. I mean, Demon Slayer was huge, but these were also like meant to be big releases. I think that's the problem with Digimon. It doesn't seem like it was meant to be like, we're gonna put all this marketing behind it, we're gonna do everything we need to do to make it successful. These movies, because it's Funimation, or at the time, Funimation back then, now Crunchyroll. At the time, like, the goal was, we're gonna treat this like a blockbuster, guys. Marketing dollars, everything. But that's actually crazy. I didn't know that it did that much worldwide. That's actually insane.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, though, right? Is like, is that wasn't their intention, and who's to know that like if they had done it that route or whatever
Right.
that it would have, but like
Done.
I could bet you that if they came out with a current Pokemon movie that's like on the heels of which I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, but what they used to do, and they used to actually release Pokemon movies in theaters and everything in conjunction with the seasons that were going on. You could probably look up the box office, granted inflation and scalable and everything, because
But still,
20 years ago, but still would probably be comparable to what some of those movies are now, right?
Yeah.
So that's why going back, trying to tie this back into the original point is, it's like, for the people to be like, oh, well, the Digimon movie didn't do that great, or, such and such, it's like, you're missing the point of like what it was intended to do in the first place.
Yeah.
You can't compare it to another anime movie, or you can't compare it to like a likewise property, because they have two totally different, release intentions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Do we want to do anime book club? Should we all try to read chapter 0 and 1 before the next podcast?
Oh yeah, I can do. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, it only came out like today or yesterday, so we had no time anyway.
No, I think we should totally do that. Totally do that.
Are we winding down? Do we get to play my game show?
Yeah, let's play your game show. I'm afraid. Let's go and play your game show, dog.
Okay, I direct your attention to the bottom of our Discord chat. This thing is called Cernumon, and I bet I'm butchering that. So Cernumon. This is a Jogress. So 2 level 6s have to go into making this. I've got clues for you. You just take a shot in the dark if you have a shot. If not, we'll move on to the next clue. We'll see if you guys can figure it out. So first off, anything Digimon wise, could you name one thing that this might be from, like combined with?
It looks like either an Anubismon or Sakuyamon to me would be one of the two.
Okay, I see you're getting that with the animal. Yeah.
Yes.
Not correct, unfortunately.
Well, okay.
Wah.
That's the best I had.
No, it's
Shit,
good.
dude. I'm looking at it right now, man.
We're rapid
This
fire
Xerneas-
guessing. We're fine.
This Xerneas looking thing. Why do I?
And I'm
feel
not.
like
By the
this-
way, I'm not cheating either. I'm not looking it up. I'm not cheating.
I'm not
If
either.
this gets voted lowest, like coolest new Digimon of the year, like I'm not gonna be surprised if this is on the bottom of everyone's list.
Why do I feel like it's the new level 6s from the Shumon and the Zephyr thing?
It's not. Okay,
Thank
so
God.
first clue, one of these fusion pieces is a Dark Master. Straight
You're
up.
lying.
What?
No, straight up. I promise you.
Hold on. I have to at least Google the Dark Masters.
Piedmon, Machine Dramon, Mega Seedramon, Puppetmon.
The fuck? Okay, is Puppetmon one of them?
Puppetmon is in fact one of them. Okay, good. So we
All
figured
right,
out.
I guess because
one half of it.
I saw trees and wood, so I assumed
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess
exactly.
I could see that. I could see that now. Yeah.
All right, this next one is harder for me to get you to guess.
Does it have something to do? I mean, maybe I'm just focusing too hard on it. Does it have something to do with the Trinity symbols on the tail? You see those?
I've just saw those.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Because I thought that would. I don't know. Usually, because when you have like a lot of times when they have two fusions that like put together and they don't resemble anything of their original forms, they'll literally like put a symbol on there to be like, oh, so that's where it is.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's why, yeah. Anyway.
No, totally. So hint number 2 for this. It is a mega plant Digimon. Is the other half of the fusion.
No way it's Argomon.
It's not Argomon. You can just fire them off if you got one.
Is it like a hero Digimon? Like an antagonist, protagonist?
No, it's genuinely a bad guy usually.
Oh, shit.
Genuine. Oh, okay.
It's a plant. Is it Hydramon?
It is indeed Hydromon.
What? I guess.
Yeah.
I really.
Yeah.
Hydramon and
no, literally, I was
Puppetmon.
about to like, yeah.
My final
What?
clue.
How?
My final
how
clue
the
is
heck?
going to be it's got the worst looking alt art in the TCG.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. Yep. Okay.
So
How
yes,
in the world does Hydramon and Puppetmon make that?
I have no idea. The second I saw it announced, I'm like, no one's gonna know this. I'm just gonna have the boys guess because I would have guessed so wrong. 100%. The trumpets, I would have gone with something. I have no idea.
That's horrifying. Okay.
Notice the pipe organs coming out of its like midsection.
Yep. I would have thought something musical, honestly.
Totally.
When I first looked at it, I was like, as weird as it could be, I was like, I'm thinking Edamon or something. Like,
yeah. That's some bullshit.
That's fair. Well, yes, there you go.
Bro, I don't understand. And this is something I'll probably have to walk back later. I don't understand Digimon Fusion sometimes when you have like a Digimon that I'm a favorite for mine, but like you have a Digimon like Mastemon, which is a clear combination of Lady Dev and Angelomon, and then you have something like this that's like it's I don't get it.
It's I get this all the time with Gamamon now because we haven't seen Proxima in anything, but it's just like this huge weird dragon thing of two things together, but like I couldn't tell where One Piece starts or One Piece ends.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, hey, a lot of cool. Honestly, the designs that are released recently are hilarious because, like, even with the Growlmon, Impmon, whatever the hell you want to call him, his champion form, I didn't realize till recently that someone told me he's got the Anarchy A on his chest and his brass knuckles say punk. So I'm like, I don't know who this was made for, but like, man, you are eating well.
Oh man. Wow.
Oh well, thanks, boys. I appreciate you playing along with me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it was fun. It was horrifying, but fun.
Perfect. That's what I like. That's the line I ride.
Well, on that note, guys, we're gonna wrap up for today. The end of episode 12. Thank y'all for sticking with us for a year, and I'm sure it's been longer than a year, even though this is episode 12. But really appreciate you guys. And do you guys have, or do y'all, as in Frawley or Dan, have any closing statements before we hit the button and say bye-bye to everybody?
No, totally. So we talked a lot today about tournament and stuff, and I would love for people to feel comfortable enough to go out to it. Remember that store regionals are coming out soon. Those just went up. Wave 2 of the regional championships is going to be accepting stuff. Those for June and August. So if you're looking to play, now you have a couple months to like set up and learn it and do it and apply for these when they're good. So like I guess I just leave you with I hope everybody has like, you know, the best luck for going on, and thank you for joining us for another monthly podcast.
Yeah, I'll mirror what he said. I think the only thing I'll add is new sets of Digimon. I think we're getting this next one. What's the
May
16? It's the end of May. So the time this goes up, it's going to be probably right around a month away. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. I think BT16 offers some really interesting stuff. Of course, we get our tricolor big boy in the secret rare, so that's going to be something interesting to change up the meta.
I'm glad I watched the rulings already.
Yeah, so yeah, no, I know that there's definitely conflicted feelings about it, but I think overall, I think it opens up a door for a lot of potential, like going forward. Not just with like, okay, cool, this is just the one secret rare. You could see it like in rookies, they've got 2 different colors and then a third color they evo from. So like, I think with coming from this set and moving forward, that's what I'm getting excited for. I think BT16 is going to be kind of like a rejuvenation set for a lot of people. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. Be excited to try some of those things out.
Partition's going to be a hell of a drug. Everybody's going to be Dark Knightmon.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And I guess on my side, guys, at the Dragon Ball Junkie here, Fusion Worlds new set comes out May 10th. So if you have been thinking about getting into Fusion Worlds, you got new leaders. We got Cell. We got Super Saiyan God Goku. We got Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta, which looks like he's going to be broken, which is good. And then we've got Zamasu. So Fuse Zamasu. So, I don't like Zamasu's ass, man. He makes me so mad. He just does. I don't like him. So he just frustrates me. So, anytime I can throw shade at him, I will. But the new set drops for Dragon Ball. As the fella said, you got Digimon coming out. Y'all know I'm checked out on Digimon until BT17 because that's when I get my boy Omnimon, my War Greymon, and I can build the deck that I've wanted to build since set 1, which is like a true Omnimon Red-Blue Jogress Insanity. So that's what I'm excited for. But yeah, guys, thank y'all for checking us out on this episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a good rest of the day, night, evening, or whatever it is when you're listening. See you in the next one. Peace.